Up with Craig Shoemaker, May 7th, with the special guest, Ruben Paul. Hey, Ruben.
Hey, Craig. How are you, man?
I'm so happy that you're here. I kind of like it. You mind if I call you OG? You know?
Yeah.
We're original gangsters.
Yes, man. Yes, we are.
We're still doing this, man.
Yeah.
Somebody said to me, "What's OG?" She goes, "Does it mean old guy?" I go, "Well, it can mean that too."
Right. It's someone who stood the test of time.
We've stood the test of time, and here we are.
Yeah.
Big career. We're in a little tiny room here, but no.
Nice room.
It is, and it's just a time that we can talk, and in a setting that there's no performance to it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with our group out there who's watching.
Yes.
We got off to a great start,
Man.
and they said,
Stop.
"Oh, stop!"
No, it can't
And
be
I don't
that
know about
good.
you. I come from a little bit of crime. That when I hear "stop," I'm going, "Oh, I'm getting caught for something."
I wouldn't have thought you came from crime.
Really?
Yeah.
It's funny that people say that, and because of the way I look. I bet you probably think, white guy, money, came up with money and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
No, no dad, crime, suicide attempt, drug overdose,
Really?
alcohol starting at 12 years old. It's like,
Are you
and I mean heavy
serious?
crime too. Like, yeah.
Where are you from originally?
Arrested. I actually have a joke I talk about. I say when I tell my kids bedtime stories.
Yeah.
Most of them, I tell them real stories about what I was like. And most stories end in happily ever after. My stories end in, and then the cops came.
I would have never thought that.
A lot of people don't.
So, two things I want to say to you.
And you probably grew up a wealthy white guy.
I wish. Parents, immigrants from Haiti.
Oh, wow.
Came to California.
Yeah.
I don't know how they got to California. Made enough money to buy a house in Carson, California, which is on the border.
Well, there you're already above me.
Yeah, and just grew up in that type of environment. But they came from extreme poverty, so everything was a huge deal. But what I was gonna say is, I feel like I know you because we have a good mutual friend, George Lopez, who brings up your name and tells stories when you guys golf and stuff like that. And I go, man, I met you the first time I met you. I was just starting out. I get a random call from Erin at the Improv.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know very well.
Sure.
And she's like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" And I was like, when it's Erin and you're first starting out, it's about work. And she's like,
And you also know I'm going to take whatever it is. I'm going to cancel whatever I have go, because people don't know she's the head of all of these comedy clubs, the top clubs in the country.
Absolutely.
Improv and levities and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she goes,
books it all.
"Can you get down to Brea?"
Okay.
And I go, "I don't know what Brea is, but yeah, I can get down to Brea."
When I first got booked there, I thought it was the Brea Tar Pits.
Oh, really?
I don't know about you. I thought I was going to go see dinosaurs in tar.
And I remember coming out there, and I was opening for you.
Yeah.
It was one of my first, early gigs. And
Was I a pain in the ass?
no, you were really nice to me.
Was I? I'm nice, but I'm a little controlling. I used to be. I'll tell you what time you're supposed to do.
Oh, interesting. I don't even remember. I was just excited to be on the show, and I knew who you were.
Yeah.
And you were nice to me, and it was a great experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I draw great crowds out there too.
Oh
I'm sure you
man,
had a
yeah,
great time.
it was great.
Certain parts of the country, I draw really solid crowds, and Brea is one of them. There's just these places where you just feel at home. Where's your place of home where you just go, wow, this is like my dinner table. These are my people. Do you have a spot?
I love the San Francisco Punchline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about that?
That's always been one of my favorite rooms. The Punchline was the first club to ever headline me, Sacramento. And I remember playing San Francisco and feeling like this is my audience. And what I mean is it was just diverse, not just in race, but just in thought, liberal.
Yeah. Which that's your preference.
Yes.
You want to go for what one would call a liberal or left crowd. That's more you.
Well, I mean,
Because I guess the other crowd, you wouldn't find them to be as open.
not as open, but what I do like about playing the other crowds is there tends to be teaching moments on both sides. So if I come up with a topic that they might not agree with, sometimes it leads to a conversation after the show.
Yeah.
And sometimes I might look at something differently after having that conversation and vice versa.
Interesting.
And I love that about comedy because we can both laugh
Yeah.
and might not agree, But then if we're civil, we can have conversations
We
and
can
see each
see,
other's.
we not only see both sides, we see all sides. And I love that about
Yes, me too.
stand-up. And I wish that more people had the respect for what we do.
Absolutely.
And not try to cancel and things like that. It's funny you should say, let's have a conversation about this. I never know where these things are going to go. They unfold naturally. But I left the left this year. I was a big lefty guy and liberal. And because of what it stood for, to me, what it stood for is compassion, empathy,
Yes.
inclusion, diversity.
Yes.
That's what it stood for. And I found that there's so much anger in this group that can be nothing else. You were talking about all sides.
Yeah.
They don't want to hear from this other side.
Yeah.
And they shut them out and they slam them and they condescending and arrogant.
Yeah.
And there isn't inclusion. There's no tolerance
Yeah.
of someone who follows a certain someone. I'm not even going to say his name because
Yeah.
that's the other thing. They're idiots. They keep saying his name, which gives him all the publicity that he looks for.
That part.
So that's
yeah.
where I used to think they were the smartest and they're turning into the dumbest,
Yeah, I agree with
including
you.
San Francisco.
Yeah.
Because there's this like virtue signaling that goes on. It's like, am I supposed to be saying that? There isn't a sense of self I'm finding.
Yeah.
Not to say the other side, but I like being in this pocket right here where we get to observe.
Absolutely. And to your point, I feel it's the same way on both sides.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
and there's a craziness about it because we're all Americans.
Yeah.
And we're all trying to, I think innately we all want the same things. We just disagree how to go about getting those
Different
things.
pathways.
Different
Yeah.
pathways.
Yeah.
And I think if we listened and had more empathy,
Correct.
then we would get more things solved. But it's just so much anger.
There's so much anger and
vitriol on both
we're
sides.
sitting there going, hey, can we,
Yeah.
like not to quote the great Rodney King, I'd rather quote Martin Luther King, but
Yeah.
can't we all get along?
We all get along. Yeah.
That's what he was trying to say is here's everyone ignited by these incidents and it's just powder kegs that are going on and people aren't dealing with their stuff.
Yeah.
And they think that if you project it onto someone else and attack them, and that's again why I left the left, is so much attack that's going on.
Yeah.
I went on a podcast of someone that they opposed, and they came at, I'm not your friend anymore. So I'm like, I'm not going to see it. I didn't want to see one of your comedy shows again.
Yeah.
So, and it goes both ways. So I did, that was a Laura Trump. I was on Laura Trump's podcast, and I also posted about Whoopi, how she's one of my close, I love Whoopi Goldberg. Now, so the right,
Yeah.
if you in quotes, they're attacking me. I'm not following you anymore. So you're going to cancel out. You think I'm the best comedian you've ever seen. You're going to cancel all of your laughter with me
Just because.
based on I like Whoopi Goldberg. And then I went on, I'm not even saying I like Laura. I didn't even know who she was, to tell you the truth. And just because I went on there, and that's where we are.
It's ridiculous.
We're
man.
unifiers if people allow it and stop with their own
Absolutely.
projection. It's just your own projection. If you see something you don't like in someone, it's always something you're not seeing in yourself.
100%.
I mean?
I agree with that. And I think, that's one great thing about stand-up is to hear different points of view.
Yeah.
To be able to laugh even at yourself or even at somebody else's expense. But there's an education that can happen and enlightenment if you just come and relax. Because think when the environment in a stand-up comedy club should be relaxed and fun and happy.
Should be.
You know what I mean? So when you're in a relaxed state, that's usually when when everybody's at their best, right?
Yeah.
And you think during that time that you'd be more open-minded to look and go, I don't agree with that, but man, that is funny.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, since when is comedy agreement?
That part, yeah.
If anything, comedy's conflict. Mm-hmm. So
100%.
I don't understand where people are coming from.
Yeah.
Like I said before, we were interrupted by our first take. One reason I love having you here is you're OG, and I was telling you that somebody said, "Does that mean old guy?" Well, it's original gangsta,
Yes.
and we've been at it for a very long time, and watched kind of. What do you think the biggest difference is now from when you started?
Well, there's a lot.
There is a lot, isn't there? Yeah.
One of the things that there's no real, and I understand the whole gatekeeper thing, and because I'm sure both dealt with gatekeepers in the business, but I find like in the art form, there's no real accountability anymore like it used to be.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started, And I had some great mentors in this business from, D.O. Hughley and George and different people.
Sure.
Where when you'd get off stage, if you had a bit that was similar to somebody else's, you would know within 30 seconds to a minute when you got off stage. Like, hey, man, just so you know, Craig Shoemaker does a bit like that.
That's
or
true.
blah, blah, blah does a bit like that. And it just
Guess
made...
what? Craig Shoemaker did a George Lopez bit, and I didn't even know it. Thank God someone pulled me aside.
Yeah.
It was a natural joke. I think it was. I joined AAA. It's for really bad alcoholics.
Oh, funny. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I thought of it on my own. And my agent Danny Robinson, I was afraid way back.
Yeah,
Danny
yeah.
said to me, "I think that's George Lopez's joke," and it went right out of my act.
Yeah. And we would do that.
Yeah.
And
But
now,
you do it for one another. You don't do it to
Exactly.
attack one another. That's the difference.
Exactly.
Now it's attack. Let me give you another reason why this person should be not doing comedy.
Exactly.
Why they should have their entire career canceled over a word, a series of words. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
So that's the big difference for you.
And I think that's one difference. And just in that environment in general, it forced you to want to be more original and more thoughtful and to write and be creative.
Yeah.
And now there's a redundancy in comedy, and it's even gotten to the point of everybody wants to do crowd work because it's the easiest thing to put out there.
It's what gets you views.
It's what gets you views,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make you a good comedian.
No.
You know what I mean? Like I'm
know.
talking about in the essence of what
Totally agree.
what we came up admiring as comedians. Like, George Carlin didn't do an hour of crowd work.
You did no crowd work.
Yeah, Richard Pryor.
No crowd
And then
work.
one thing about George, one of his rules, like, hey, man, don't talk to the crowd, man. Just get up there and say what you have to say. And I appreciated that
I agree.
about him. And when I started,
You mean Lopez told you that?
oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's a big proponent. And he explained to me, he goes, if they're talking to all the comedians, by the time I get up there, they're going to feel comfortable
Oh, I
enough to
so
talk
agree
to
with
me.
him. That's why I asked you if I was nice to you in Brea, because I actually do say to people opening for me, and some people think I'm a jerk for saying it.
Yeah.
I say, hey, don't waste all the F words, you know what I mean? Because then and now when I say it, it doesn't have any impact.
Yeah.
And don't talk to the crowd because I'm first of all, I don't want to watch, so, they talk to that one, they talk to that one. Do your best set.
Yes,
If you're in a race, run your best race.
100%.
You're only going to go forward if you're in a sprint, and you just do your sprint and get to the finish line, and then you're done. You did your part.
Absolutely.
Or if it's a relay, you do your part of the relay and you hand the baton over.
And Craig, as the headliner, you have the right to say that because
Yeah.
it's your show. Because at the end of the day, what you got to go, hey, the other guy asked me that already. Oh, and then, the audience is yelling out, his name is Kevin. Like, it's like, dude, why am I dealing with all this? Just get up there and do your stuff. But most importantly for me is I wanted to move from opener to feature to headliner.
Yeah.
And the only way you could do that, in the early 2000s, late 90s when I started, was you had to show the club that you had the material. How could they move you up if they didn't see you do 30 minutes of straight material?
Good point. And that is a difference in today's market, if you will. They think that it's about, you watch somebody like a Matt Rife, and never will I attack a comedian.
Matt is,
and
I
he's
know
done
Matt
really
very
well
He's
at what
done
he
great.
does. I saw clips from a movie. He looks brilliant in the movie, but he set a trend just like Dane Cook set a trend to go to MySpace. I mean, there are trendsetters where you're going, okay, how do I get out there? How do I, I'm really good, but I want to move this. I want to get more
the needle.
crowds.
Yeah.
Move the needle.
Yeah.
And it is a mystery.
It is.
And it does change and it shifts. I think one of the biggest changes that is unfortunate is the quick hit. You smash a beer can on your head and it gets views, and now you're the beer can on the head guy.
Yeah.
And not storytelling. I don't know. And you're a storyteller, and and we get to see who you are on the
Yes.
stage. And I believe, in when I coach comedians, I teach it. I said, go be you. You're the only you have.
Yeah.
They can't disagree with you, by the way, if you share your experience.
Absolutely.
There's nobody going, wait a minute, I object to it. You objected to my life?
Yeah.
Sorry, you don't get to do that.
But you know what we're going to find out very quickly? What has longevity and what doesn't.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
And the reason why you can sit here however many years later
Yeah.
is because you have substance to what you're doing.
Stay true to me.
And stay true to you, and that lasts.
Same for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that lasts. Now, Is it going to mean that you're going to be the number one comic in the world? Who knows? But at least to be able to work consistently and to say that I do this for a living, I pay bills with what, by telling these jokes and knowing that
they'll find you.
They'll find you eventually.
If you have integrity and you're really, really good, they're going to find you. And it happens. I'll go on a little run of, oh boy, there's very few people here. And by the way, I lean into it. I make fun of myself and actually have my best sets sometimes. I won 25 people in Huntsville last week.
Wow.
And you go, oh boy. And then I put 500 people at the Canyon Club in Agora. You know what I mean? Like, just don't know. There's no rhyme or reason. That's the thing. There's no formula to it. But I do think the longevity formula, the scalability formula, the sustainable formula is to just be you, absolutely not compromised.
And understanding that there's going to be ebbs and flows in a career.
Of course there are.
And
by the way, I was the number one comedian.
100%.
No, I mean, I literally won, and
I'm very familiar.
It was. I tell people often, it was the loneliest night of my life. So it got to tell me a lesson: is when you put these things on other people to vote for you, on other people to approve of you, you're not being organic. You're not in it for the right reasons. You're in it for some sort of validation, and that was a validation that was false. All awards are false.
What made it the loneliest for you?
Because I got there and I went, oh my God, there's no there. I mean, I got there and I went, oh, woo, you really wanted this award, because Seinfeld had won it, Ellen DeGeneres and Jeff Foxworthy. I remember the list. I'm going, oh, now I'm going to have a show about a gay redneck and a show about nothing. You know what I mean? This is what I really assumed. All of these things would happen, and the opposite happened. I became the target of comedians. I became the jealousy, and they look at this guy and he doesn't deserve it, and he's a hack, and all that thief and all that stuff that comes with it. Suddenly I'm a bullseye, not embraced. And so I went around that night with my trophy and my limo alone. Where do I go? They made fun of me because I walked in the Comedy Store, which I never even hang out there, with my trophy, thinking they're going to go, hey man. I watched them laughing at me. And it was really a rough night.
The saying, heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah, it's a great saying. I never thought about that.
And I see, just like we brought up Matt Rife and him being, moving into that point, all the hate that he gets.
Exactly. That's a great example.
And
right?
Yeah. And you sit back and go, I don't begrudge anybody having any type of success, because I know how hard it is to get to where you got 100%. to get to, no matter how Matt got there or how you got there, it's not easy to get to that place. So I respect it and I admire it. And I remember having a conversation with Matt as it started to blow up. And I won't go into all the details of the conversation because it was a private conversation. I said, hey, man, just always remember, just do what don't make them make you do things you don't want to do. Because you see that sometimes because your representation gets desperate.
And most of them are idiots.
Yeah.
They don't know creativity.
Yeah. And
they're not what happened to radio, by the way. Radio, all the television, it all goes downhill when you have people that are not creative, bean counters, fear-based people that are running the show, and they don't let us have the reins. Let us ride the horse.
And they're not looking at the long run.
No.
They're looking for, hey, I'm trying to buy a house next week or next month or next year.
I'm going to get 10% of this guy.
Exactly.
I'm going to get him a big giant deal where he could make a fool of himself. I don't care. What do they care? They're in the back room.
Exactly.
Back there with their free tequila or whatever it is. And that's how they live.
Yeah.
And it's literally, I'm not saying all and blah, blah, blah.
Not.
But
there's great agents
but it's literally leeches.
Yeah.
Think about it. It's a leech. A leech only exists from this organism that they're attached to.
Yeah.
The only way they can make $1 is to attach to the right organisms.
Yeah.
And I've always
you
had
make
a
it
rough
sound
time
like the
with
movie Aliens. It's popping out your chest. 10%.
Actually, they used an agent. That was an actual agent that they used as the model for that. I would not be surprised.
That's why when you find a great agent or a great manager that really sees the big picture of them, of the journey, that's great. But a lot of them are just in the moment, in the now, and they direct some of these people. So you can make a lot of money fast, or you can be a slow burner, you know? And do I have goals and things I want to accomplish? Absolutely. But I am proud of the fact that I'm still here. I'm still working. I'm still relevant. And that to me is why we do this, because we have something to say that people want to hear.
Yeah. Do you still do Ruby Tuesdays?
Yes. And
Which I literally, you know what an earworm is?
No.
You never heard of an earworm? It's when you hear a song or a phrase and it just goes over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Well, with you, it's a freaking nightmare. I would just, good Ruby Tuesdays, name on you, when you oh God, when you were coming into there, oh no, it's going to be an earworm for days.
Yeah, I'm still doing it. And what's interesting about the show is I never wanted to host a show because I thought I knew the amount of work it took to go into it.
And produce, by the way.
Produce it,
you have
yeah.
to tell people that are neophytes, they don't know the industry. We always have to assume that no one knows anything about it.
Yeah.
You produce the show.
I produced the show.
And it's not just you get up, hey, everybody, here he is, and you go, here's your next act. You do a little bit. No, you have to pick the lineup. You got to pay them. You got to get the room. You got to do all that stuff. You promote, which is really tough.
Which is really hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been blessed enough to have, great friends to come.
Sure.
That helped me with the process. But, excuse me, I didn't realize how much work it was. Because I remember a friend go, why don't you just do a monthly show? And I was like, nah, the only kind of wants me to do a weekly show. We'll do a weekly show. And after a couple of months, you're like, wow, this weekly show is tough. But once the train leaves the station, the last thing you want to do is go back. And then, so I stuck with it. Yeah. And I had a vision for the show. I just didn't want it to be another comedy show. And I'll share this with you because a lot of people ask me, like, why did you start Ruby Tuesday and why do you book the type of show that you book? I kind of felt that comedy was very segregated. And like you'd go to these clubs. Well, let me back up. I started out at the Comedy Act Theater, and at that time, D.L. Hughley was the house MC. And he was my first mentor.
Wow, that was a while ago.
Yeah, he was my first mentor.
Mid-90s.
For me, yeah, late 90s, yeah.
Okay.
And because he took over, I guess. There are other house
That's
MCs.
not Enns Mitchell, is it?
No, that was the Comedy Union.
That's the Union.
That was the Union.
Not the Union.
No, not the Union. It was called the Comedy Act Theater, and Michael Williams owned the club, and Robin Harris was the house MC.
Robin Harris.
Yeah, so he had already passed away before I had started doing comedy.
No way. Okay.
Yeah. So, but when I started, DL was he was one of the house MCs. And I remember there were some other comics, they were going to the Comedy Store and they were going to the Improv and the Laugh Factory. And one day DL goes, hey man, how come you don't work any of those, mainstream clubs, AKA white clubs? And I go, I don't know, man. I don't know if they'd get me. And he goes, we barely get you.
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
That's him, all right. Yeah.
So, but he laughed and he's like, no, Ruben. He was like, your style of comedy would translate to anybody.
Oh.
So then I would start doing these shows. Laugh Factory was one of the early clubs that got me in.
And what does one do when you're getting in line, you're 1 o'clock in the morning, you're getting there bad spots?
I was fortunate.
Someone introduced you?
Yeah, someone introduced me.
That always helps.
Yeah, it was managed by the name of Marcus King, who was managing Jamie Foxx and Mark Curry and those guys.
Yeah.
He just... we were just having a conversation. He said he knew the owner of the Laugh Factory. He's like, oh, I can get you a showcase. He called over, got me a showcase. I was fortunate enough to go up. Jamie saw me, liked me, and I became a regular on the spot and started getting spots, and then later went to the Improv and became a regular there. But one thing that I noticed was these clubs would have theme nights. A Black night, a Latino night, an Asian night, which is fine, and I think those shows are needed because some people can't get stage time on the quote unquote mainstream
white
show.
night.
On white night, which is really, no one wants to say it, but here's how it kind of shifted for me. I was doing a gig in Korea, and the booker already had two people booked. It was a white guy and me, and he was like, I need another comic. And I was like, what are you looking for? He described like this style of comedy one. I was like, I got somebody perfect. It happened to be another black comic who fit what he was asking for, but he just happened to be black. And he was like, well, he's like, we already got you on the show. He's like, you know, can you think of another, you know, white guy or Latino guy or something? I go, can I ask you something? He goes, yeah. I go, what does it matter if it's just comedy? He goes, I don't know. It's like, you know, I want it to be diverse. I go, but you're okay having 2 white guys and 1 black guy, but not 2 black guys and 1 white guy? He goes, well, I didn't mean it like this, but here's the kicker. I go, can I ask you a question? He goes, absolutely. I go, if you have a show and there's 4 white guys and 1 black guy on the show, what would you call the show? He go, well, it's a comedy show. I go, okay. I said, if it's 4 black guys and 1 white guy, what would you call the show? And he goes, it's a black show. I go, why wouldn't it just be a comedy show?
Wow. He really said that.
Yeah. But because I found that that's kind of the mentality in the industry.
Yeah.
So when Jamie Masada approached me about doing the show, I happened to be one of those comics that would work the Latino rooms and work the mainstream rooms and work the black rooms. So I knew all the great comics. Like, I kind of felt like there's no reason why Craig Shoemaker and Cedric the Entertainer don't know each other, have never been on a lineup together. There's no reason why Dane Cook doesn't know Rodney Perry, or why Kevin Hart doesn't know, you know, Bert Kreischer. Like, to me, we're all comics. So because I knew all the comics, I was like, let me do a show. I'll put the best of the best, no matter what race they are, no matter what their sexual orientation are. If they're funny, they have a place. And guess what? Human beings have the capacity to love Jerry Seinfeld and Richard Pryor at the same time. They have the capacity to love Craig Shoemaker and George Lopez at the same time. And what I started finding was audiences would go, hey, man, like my black friends were like, you know, I don't usually like white comics, but that white boy is hilarious. Who's that white boy?
I love it's always white boy. It makes me laugh. I've been called a white boy so many times. It just makes, and I've been that white boy.
You know, but it comes from an endearing place most of the time when it's said.
Oh, 100%. You know? Oh, I love it. Yeah. I love it.
Like, that white boy can play, man.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a white man can jump.
Yes.
And that is literally what it's like. You're in the playground. And they're going, you can play ball with us.
Yes.
And a little bit of test in there, you know, throw a ball in your face or whatever it is, or try to dunk on you and see what's up. And then when you deliver, they're going, oh, now you got respect.
Absolutely.
You know? And it works that way all over the industry.
Yeah.
Once you prove yourself, there's an amount of respect.
Absolutely. And I think
actually, it's a weird thing personally with me, and I have ideas on this. Black comics have, like, it's a lot. Again, it surprises me. Have the big respect for me, and white comics don't have as much. And I'm going to tell you the reason for it.
Okay.
And I want to know. I'm going to ask you, being a black comic.
Yeah.
If you're just listening, he's black. Anyway,
I am black.
My feeling is when people have like resentment or hatred or whatever it is towards someone, it's a projection of themselves that they can't deal with. So I'm not going to be liked by white people, like a white male especially, who's projecting onto me something inside of themselves they're not dealing with or whatever it is, or something where they find themselves a phony or they find themselves a hack or whatever those things are that are going to label you. So nowhere near. I walk in a room, all black room, the comics are like, hey, man, you're OG. You know, like I had one guy, I had no idea even who I was. Cat Williams. And he was at a golf tournament. I go, hey, man, you probably know who I am.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Yeah,
He goes,
come on.
He goes, me and Larry the Cable Guy used to sit in the back of the room in Sacramento and watch you.
Dude.
You know, you blaze the trail. This is what him telling me this. And I'm looking at him going, he's like, the theaters, back in theaters and everything else. But I got, in that moment, I said to myself, oh, I think that's what it is, because a white guy won't give that up. Now, I want to ask you if the same thing goes, like, I have respect for you. I've written, DL's my friend. I got unbelievable respect. And DL actually told me, we're at the bar. He goes, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I was really jealous of your last special. You were unbelievable. I was going, whoa. Now, I seriously, I don't think a white guy's ever said that to me. So, and that's my theory anyway. What do you think?
There's a saying in our communities, game recognized game. So when you see somebody who's good at what they do and you feel like you're good at what you do, there's just a natural mutual respect, because we understand the struggle and how hard it is, like I said before, Craig, to accomplish what you've accomplished in this business. No one can ever take that away from you, whether they want to hate on you, whether they want to call you names.
I think it's a bit of a threat. And what I'm asking you is, in your community, your community, does that exist? Like the self-hate kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely.
And by the way, it happens with, we're here. I mean, it's everybody, every religion.
Yeah.
There's some sort of
Of course.
loathing that goes on. Sometimes it even fuels you, but there's like a jealousy. Well, for instance, Cat Williams, he doesn't go after a lot of white people. When he's outing people.
Yes.
It's mostly black people.
100%. Yeah.
So speak to this. I mean, what do you think?
There's always, I think jealousy is always a natural.
But it's jealousy of your own kind.
Yeah.
I think more so.
Because I think people put themselves in that position.
That's right. I want that job.
Yeah,
I want, I want. Yeah.
I'm a black male.
Yeah.
You're not a threat to me because we're not going to go out for the same roles.
Exactly right.
It's not going to be like, oh man, I lost out to Craig Shoemaker. You know what I mean?
No.
But somebody else in your same demographic, there is that probably competitive thing where it makes people. I just grew up in a way where I just believe what's meant for you is meant for you.
Yeah.
So that's why I've never even gotten bitter, even when I've probably had moments of weakness where I'm like, man, how did he get that? And he's not even that, when you go through those natural emotions. And then I just take a deep breath and go, that's not my journey. That's not my path.
That was not your job to have.
Just focus on being the best you can be.
By the way, it might not be the best thing for that person anyway. We don't know that.
We don't know.
I was cast in something that turned out to be literally one of the worst jobs in television history.
Wow.
Literally. Magic Johnson show. I was the co-host.
That's right.
Now, I was up against 500 people and I got the job. And that turned out to be one of the biggest disasters. Of course, I made the best out of it by making fun of the situation, but still, it was one of the, so you don't know.
You don't know.
So when you're jealous of someone, just pray for the success.
100%.
Speaking of prayer, what's your situation with conscious contact with God, Jesus, Moses? I mean, what do you have any spiritual practice?
Yes, absolutely. I'm Christian, and my parents, rest in peace, were both missionaries.
From Haiti.
From Haiti. When they came to this country, my family fled Haiti.
That's a rough area. Do you go back?
I'm gonna go back hopefully when things settle down, because a part of my special that I'm shooting is my first time ever going to Haiti. My parents would never let me go growing up. They used to take food and clothes there every year. My parents would go preach at different churches and raise money. So the diversity of my comedy comes directly from them, because my father would show up at any church he could, whether it was a white church, Latino church, black church, Asian church, and he would preach in French or Creole, and my mom would translate into whatever language, because she spoke English, Spanish, and French. So I grew up, sleeping under the pews and, having them preach and raise money. So that was the upbringing I came from, and everything was about life and death for them. And as a kid, I didn't really understand it. And as I got older, I think I was resenting a little bit of it, until I got to a point where I kind of understood what their life was and what their journey was. I was a kid that I was good in sports. My parents never came to any sporting event I ever played, because they looked at sports as superficial. They're fighting life and death, a waste of time.
Yeah.
They allowed me to play because they knew that's what I wanted to do.
Sure.
But, people didn't think I had a mom and dad. My parents were married and together, but I was always riding with the other kids' parents. Like, does your mom and dad know how good you are?
Wow.
Senior night, no parents show up. You know what I mean?
Now at the dinner table, are you like mad at them? Are you telling them this is not right? I mean, it was
just my way of life.
Yeah.
I wouldn't question.
Well, if it didn't happen, you might not be a comedian. If they were approving of everything, you just glided through with parents that gave you all the accolades.
This is the type of dad that I had. I remember they didn't believe in wasting food of any kind.
Yeah, I got you.
And I remember throwing some food away, and my father just happened to come back from a missionary trip from Haiti with some Super 8 film. So as I wasted the food, he was like, come here, let me show you who would love to eat this food that you're throwing away. And for a child to see starving kids starving is, it gave me perspective, but yet being so young, I'm still a kid and I still want to feel.
It's hard to have empathy.
Yes.
At that age, that's something you grow into.
Yeah.
Empathy. Although I had a lot when I was a kid. Although there was one saying they probably didn't do. They were like direct. We would hear the sayings. There are starving children in blank.
Africa. Yes.
Well, it'd be I don't know if it was generational or neighborhoods or whatever it was. There was always a blank.
Yes.
My mom would just generalize across the sea. so there's starving children across the sea.
Yeah.
And I would say, well, they won't eat lima beans, trust me. And I would put them in an envelope and write across the sea and put a stamp on it. The lima beans. There's nobody that's going to eat these canned lima beans.
So I have a joke that I do about my parents, and it's pretty that. It's like, don't be wasteful. Don't eat your food. Don't be wasteful. Eat your food. Mm-hmm. There's kids in Africa, and the audience will be like, they'll just start laughing off of that. And the joke is, my dad would be like, eat your food. Don't be wasteful. Your cousins are dying, So
he's cutting to the root there.
Cutting to the root of it. So eat that damn food because you have relatives who aren't eating right now. But that's just the joke and the sentiment that as I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate that about them.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, it's amazing how you end up appreciating your parents. I mean,
yeah.
I just got to a place where, I've just such love for my mom, and I'm fortunate to still have her around. And
good for you, man.
Oh my God. And we have the best conversations. And there was so much strife back then. And she was trying the best she could with no money, trying to raise us on lima beans. What were some of your poor food that I cannot eat today? I'm a big eater, but there's certain poor foods that it represents poverty to me.
Yeah.
And I can't do it. Do you have poor foods that you can think of?
Bologna sandwiches.
Oh, I think I could down one of those.
Spam.
We fried our bologna.
Oh, of course.
You
and
did?
Then you had to pop it in the middle.
And you pop the thing in the middle, and you put little slits.
Yes.
And the fried bologna. Oh, and we had pork roll too. It was called pork roll. Taylor's pork roll.
Spam.
That I can't do again.
Yeah, Spam was another one.
Again.
Yeah.
That was. Sorry, Spam. If you want to be a sponsor, I will chow it down right now. If Spam wants to be a sponsor, the kids think that Spam is like, something you get on the internet, in your inbox. But we ate Spam, and it was it had more sodium than the ocean. And it was.
So I have a line where I go,
in a can.
I go, meat in a can is never a good idea. Even if it's dog food.
The dog shoots it down. The dog would shoot it down. I remember certain foods. The dog was my ally, by the way, would just be there. And my mom would say, I don't know if you had this in your house. There's that poor mentality, and we had it. Mm-hmm. It existed my entire life. You finish all of your food, or you do not get to watch TV. You do not get, but that was the punishment.
Yes.
So they'd be in the other room, was even worse. And I would be there. I'd spread it around. I tried every trick in the book. Nothing worked.
Nothing.
I put it in my mashed potatoes. I still couldn't stand it. And then I tried, I would stuff it in my pants, in a napkin in my pants, and I'd throw the napkin across the street. The Fuchters had a big load of lima bean fields because they were, I'm just kidding. But I mean, I would feed it some things to the dog, and the dog would choke it out. And then she would take something, and then she would pile double. As a punishment. My mom would, she'd say, no, okay, you're going to get punished now. But did you have another poor food that you would just, to this day, you go, I can't, it would represent going backwards in time?
Those are the only two things that I can think of off the top of my head. But one thing that I do miss is the Haitian food that my mom would
did
cook.
Did it have a French feel to it? Because I'm not familiar with.
No,
it's very French. Haiti's very French.
Haiti's very French because we're colonized by France, but it's very Caribbean. Like the one thing is, all Caribbean food is the same. It's just prepared differently.
It's the same as Mexican.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So
right.
Jamaicans have their rice and peas. We have our rice and beans and the jerk, and everyone has their versions of their food in the Caribbean. And that's the food I grew up eating. And being in Los Angeles, my mom used to go shop at the Spanish market to get some of the ingredients to make, Haitian food. And that's one thing that after losing them that I really missed.
Let me ask you one more question.
Yeah.
This show is a lot about the turnaround of life, and we've heard about some of your turnarounds today. Can you pinpoint something in your life where you're up against it and you were forced to have a turnaround? And tell us about that. What happened in your life where you were faced with an obstacle that seemed insurmountable? And we say this on this show to give people ideas and suggestions and ways to manage your life. Well, you don't have to stay depressed. You don't have to stay down. You don't have to stay a victim. You don't have to stay blaming.
Well, I lost both my parents in a car accident.
Oh, wow.
And
wow, I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you.
At once. Wow, that's
I'll tell you I'll give you the quick version of the story. I just remember it being like the most beautiful day. I'd written a short film, and we did all this pre-production and prep work, and we were literally going to shoot the next morning. We had a cast reading, and in the middle of it, I get a phone call from my sister. And my sister's very strong woman, very alpha personality. Mm-hmm. And I pick up the phone, I go, hello? And then she says my full name. She goes, Ruben. And then for some reason, stomach just
you
dropped.
Had a reaction.
And I go, hey. And she was like, don't panic. And I was like, what? And she was like, Mom and Daddy were in a car accident and they can't find Daddy. And I go, were they in the car together? He's like, that's just what they're telling me. And we need to get to Florida now, because when I went to college, my parents moved from Los Angeles to Miami so they can be in a Haitian community. Like my father's like, get me out of California.
Wow.
So we fly. My mom's in ICU. She lost her right arm in the accident, but they thought she was going to recover. And then we found out when we arrived that my dad died on the scene. So,
but they said they couldn't find him.
Yeah, whoever relayed the information.
Their way of not
wanting to say that, right, hey, your dad is deceased.
Yeah.
So when we get out there, I'll try to tell the story as quickly as possible, but I just want to set it up to show, to give an example of how you can overcome things. Mm-hmm. It was going to be a long recovery for my mother because they got hit by a semi. It was a huge accident. And we had to make a decision. Do we bury my dad while my mom is in ICU? The love of her life is gone. Does she even know he's gone? Does she know he's dead? We made the decision to have a funeral without my mom there in Miami because my father had a presence in the Haitian community there. We have that funeral. We constantly checking in with the hospital. Your mom is stable, hasn't gotten any better, hasn't gotten any worse, but she's stable. We had one funeral there for the Haitian community. Their plots were here in California. So we flew the body back to California, had a funeral in California a week later. And after my dad's funeral, we're literally walking back to the car, get a call from the hospital saying that my mom just died. So we had 3 funerals in 3 weeks. 2 for my dad, 1 in Florida, 1 in LA, and then had a funeral for my mom the next week because she died the day of my dad's funeral. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't equipped at the time. Like, I've never experienced that. I didn't know anybody who experienced that. My career, I was young in my career, and I was booking stuff, you know what I mean? I booked a movie, a couple movies, TV show, and things were going well.
You're on a real roll.
Yeah.
Suddenly.
You know what I mean?
That's how quickly things can.
And my mom was everything to me.
Yeah.
And I love my dad just as much, but me and my mom was the type of person that would call you and go, what's wrong? And I go, what do you mean? She goes, I don't know, I just got a feeling something's wrong. And she'd be always right. Mm-hmm. Like, she had this psychic ability to just know things, and to have that taken away from you. She would be who I would call and ask advice. She would call and give me unsolicited advice, but she was always dead on. And I remember after everything happened, like, okay, I need to get back to this career, but I never dealt with it. I just went back. I was probably walking around like a serial killer, man. I got back on stage.
It's a grief process, and there
Yeah.
are stages of grief, and you skip stages,
Yes.
which we're going to suggest to people not to
do.
that. Yeah,
Not do.
you're really
And Craig,
going to, it's going to increase
what I realized
trauma
was
and the wound.
I was functionally depressed
Yeah,
for years.
yeah.
And I never
Wow.
dealt with it. And one day I was talking to a mentor of mine. He goes, we were just talking, and the subject of my parents came up, and it was just it had been almost 10 years, but it still felt like it happened yesterday.
Sure.
And I had to deal with it, so I went and got help, and talked about it, and released it. Was able to talk about it on stage.
Wow.
You know, to be able to bring my dad on stage to do this character of him on stage.
Oh, that's amazing.
You know what I mean? And
It's
not
real.
Yeah.
It's real. You're really honoring them, and you're giving them what they want. They would never want you to walk around depressed. Why would they want their child depressed?
Yeah.
Why would they want you to take your dreams away
And
because of an accident that happened?
I became very withdrawn.
Yeah.
And that was, in our business, that's not a good thing to be. No. Like, I wouldn't show up at any of the parties. I wasn't doing any, because people go, man, you're so likable. Everybody loves you, man. How come we never see you at anything? Because I was at home suffering.
Isolation.
Yeah. I isolated myself, and I probably isolated myself from a lot of opportunities. But to be in this place now, this many years later,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I
having,
do know what you mean.
to be able to honor them, to honor their legacy, to embrace the Haitian culture, which I ran from most of my life being in Los Angeles. The answer is don't skip any steps, and it's okay to cry, it's okay to mourn, and it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm always the life of the party.
Don't need to fix it.
Don't need to fix it. Because everybody's like I'm the type of person, Craig, if I'm not in a good mood, everybody knows it immediately because I'm always in a good mood.
Right.
So imagine the pressure of having to always be in a good mood when your heart is
I
shattered.
understand it. I absolutely.
You know?
I have such a empathy for you, but compassion, but also an understanding and an admiration. I really admire you. Thank you for sharing that story. It's awesome. Hit my heart, and I know it'll hit some other hearts. And you could be helping people because grief is a really misunderstood animal.
Absolutely.
And just like a wild animal, it needs to be treated.
Yeah.
It needs to be treated with care and understanding.
And can I tell you the good thing that came out of this?
Yeah.
Through this pain and through this trauma, and I have to be careful with this, but for the most part, is I've been able to be a friend and a confidant to so many people who've gone through loss. I mean, I've gotten phone calls from people who I didn't even knew my story. Like, go, hey, dude. I'm like, hey, what's going on? I was like, there's a guy that I went to school with, hadn't talked to him in years. He lost his dad suddenly at a restaurant. His dad went to the bathroom and never came back. And he called me. There's like, yo, man, such and such is trying to get in touch with you. I was like, okay. I called him. He's like, you're the first person I thought of.
Wow.
And I was able to talk to him and give him.
That's a call from a higher source.
Yeah.
That's where that comes from. There's this interconnectivity that takes place. And once you enter in that realm, that's a way out.
Yeah.
Is to have these, then you get to offer a helping hand of experience. That's what I was saying even about stand-up. If you share your experience, no one can deny it.
Yeah.
They can deny your opinion. They can't deny your experience.
And it can help people heal, like you said.
Exactly.
And when I started understanding that, even though, do I wish I never went through this trauma and pain? Absolutely. But the blessing of it is I have friends who have gone through very traumatic situations, and to be able to let them know I understand.
And the isolation is very natural, but the head is a bad neighborhood. You don't go in alone.
Yeah.
You don't go in alone. And, and we come from a background where we know that there's safety in numbers, there's comfort, there's support. It's there. But if you avoid it, then you end up sick and suffering.
Yeah, man.
Suffering's a choice, and make the other choice. Man.
Yeah.
Well, here's the bummer is now all of my fans are going to be contacting you. Everyone that's had it. I think I don't even know the guy, but I'm going to follow him on social media. I'm going to DM him once I have some grief that I want to deal. I'm going to go to Ruben Paul.
And I'm here for it, man, because, what's the journey? We're all just trying to be happy, man.
Exactly.
And it's that journey of what you go through. If I can help bring some happiness or some peace or some comfort to somebody, I'm grateful for that.
And it manifests itself in different ways. It doesn't always have to be in the same platform.
Yeah.
It could be anything. Well, I appreciate you for being in this platform.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That we're out of time, but that's all we got, man. We got some time. We had this time together, and it was awesome, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate
let's
you.
work together sometime. I know you're a big headliner. You probably won't open for me anymore.
I mean, if you'd ever want to come slum at Ruby Tuesdays, I would love to have you. Of course
I will. Invite me on Tuesdays.
If
I know in advance, I tell my kids, listen, I'm going to go, goodbye, Ruby Tuesdays. Name on you when you change with every... I bet
Sing it, Craig.
Still I'm going to miss you. I don't know the words to anything except that. Anyway, thanks. How can we get a hold of you?
My website is rubenpaul.com. You can social media. I am Ruben Paul on X or Instagram.
Okay.
I am Ruben Paul.
Ruben, R-U-B-E-N.
Yes.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you being here. Hey, by the way, pass the word on this. Again, this is for you. This podcast is designed and inspired by you who might be in a position where you might need an assistance. You might need a guide. You might need a little Sherpa shifter. You might need a Sherpa to guide you in some treacherous terrain sometimes. And I got to be honest, comics, we've been through it. We are like Sherpas.
Yeah.
And we've been down those and up and down those hills with avalanches and storms and everything else. And we just keep going. And it's for the pleasure of other people, which gives us pleasure as well.
Yeah.
Thanks for being a pleasure to be here. And I'll see you all next time. Still standing up.